واتل ما أوحي إليك من كتاب ربك لا مبدل لكلماته ولن تجد من دونه ملتحدا.
الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We'll continue inshallah ta'ala with Surah Al-Kahf and verse number 47. 47 to 49, as you see in the bottom of page 937 from the Tafseer of Imam Sa'di rahimahullah. يقول الله عز وجل: ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة وحشرناهم فلم نغادر منهم أحدا وعرضوا على ربك صفا لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه ويقولون يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحدا. Which means, and warn of the day when we will remove the mountains and you will see the earth exposed and you will gather them and not leave behind them and not leave behind from them anyone, and they will be presented before your Lord in rows, and he will say, you have certainly come to us just as we created you the first time, but you claimed that we would never make for you an appointment. And the record of deeds will be placed open, and you will see the criminals fearful of that within it, and they will say, oh, woe to us. What is this book that leaves nothing small or great except that it has enumerated it? And they will find that what they did present before them, and your Lord does injustice to no one. So, وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ. Now the verses talks about the Day of Judgment, as the previous one showed the reality of this life, and for the believers not to be deceived as a result of what's mentioned as an example, as a parable that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave of the reality of this life, gave us clear image of what the reality of this life is, so that no one would say, I was deceived, that I didn't know. And before that, the story of the man with the two gardens and the affairs and the end of things, so that the person is given the means to understand what is to be done now for what's the end. So to make decisions now for what benefit the person, or be warned of what's going or coming ahead or at the end of things. So now the verses talks about the Day of Judgment. And this is why al-malu wal-banun zinatul hayati dunya. The wealth and offsprings are the adornment of this life. وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ. Right before this ayah, وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ. What stays forever, the righteous deeds that stays forever. خَيْرٌ ثَوَابًا خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا. This is the best thawab by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the best hope. This is where your hopes supposed to be focused on. الْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتِ. All of the good deeds, saying dhikr, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, as-salawatul khams. All of these things that the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, they mentioned as with the tafsir of the mithal, or with the example. And there's a hadith about al-baqiyatul salihat, is these words of adhkar and everything else that a person is upon with matters of righteous good deeds. So then these are baqiyat where the person would see it. He's not seeking rewards in this worldly life. وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ. In the Day of Judgment. So he says here, rahimahullah, يخبر تعالى عن حال يوم القيامة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is informing about the affairs of the Day of Al-Qiyamah. وَمَا فِيهِ مِنَ الْأَهْوَالِ الْمُقْلِقَةِ. And what's in it from al-ahwal. Al-ahwal is the terrifying things. Al-muqliqa, and the plural, the singular of al-ahwal is al-hawl. Al-muqliqa from al-qalaq, when someone is disturbed, worried. والشدائد المزعجة, الشدائد, the difficulties, the intense difficulties of things. مزعجة, al-iz'aj is when someone is annoyed. Of course, everything is disturbed, and everyone, when they are resurrected, because it's only two groups, فريق في الجنة وفريق في السعير. So in the Day of Judgment, وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ. When the mountains, نُسَيِّر, السَّيْر is when something is moving. أي he says يزيلها عن أماكنها, removes it from its place. ويوم نسير الجبال, the mountains, these mighty mountains are very well established in the earth. It will move from its place. يجعلها كثيبا, and it will be leveled, becomes كثيب. Al-Kathib is the heap of sand that has no physical structure to it. ويجعلها كثيبا ثم يجعلها كالعهن المنفوش. So it moves from its place, then it crumbles down, and then it becomes like العهن المنفوش. العهن is the cotton or the cotton, منفوش, flying. So no structure to it, no physical strength to it whatsoever. Everything is destroyed. ثم تضمحل وتتلاشى. Then it vanishes and it becomes nothing. وتكون هباء منبثا. And all of these words are mentioned in the Quran, so it explains. The mountains in the Quran is mentioned in the Day of Judgment, how many different stages it goes through. So it moves from its place, then it becomes kathib, then it's like the cotton, and then after that it's removed completely, and it becomes like al-haba. Al-haba is what you don't see normally. It's when you have the sun light, you see these dust particles in the air. This is what they call it, al-haba, something that is insignificant. Mumbatha, scattered all over the place. وتبرز الأرض, and the earth becomes apparent, becomes clear. فتصير قاعا صفصفا لا عوج فيها ولا أمتا. Nothing high, nothing low. All of it is flattened. There's no place for anyone to be on a higher place than someone else. ويحشر الله جميع الخلق على تلك الأرض. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would يحشر, will gather. وترى الأرض بارزة. The earth is very clear because this is where people are going to be resurrected on. But it's not the same أرض, it's not the same earth. يوم تبدل الأرض يوم تبدل الأرض والسماوات, that the earth and the skies will be replaced. يوم تبدل الأرض غير الأرض والسماوات. The earth will be something else and the skies also will be something else. Not necessarily the physical one the way that we see it like this. And it's mentioned in the hadith of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, it will be كقرصة النقي, like the flower, the color of the flower that is not as white as it's not extremely white, but it's لا معلم فيها لأحد. Very one color, and there's no ma'lam, there's no sign for anyone on the earth, meaning in the Day of Judgment. No higher place, no house, no place to hide. Everything is the same. Everyone has equal stand on the earth in the Day of Judgment. ويحشر الله جميع الخلق على تلك الأرض فلا يغادر منهم أحدا. So the ayah, ويوم نسير الجبال وترى الأرض بارزة, very apparent, very clear. وحشرناهم, and we bring them, الحشر, we gather them. فلم نغادر منهم أحدا. نغادر, no one will be left to leave. No one will have, can I quit, can I leave, can a person kill himself, can he choose not to? There's no such a thing, it's too late. فلم نغادر فلا يغادر, as he says in the tafsir, فلا يغادر منهم أحدا. المغادرة is when you depart. And this is if you go to the airports, for example, where there's Arabic, departure is called al-mughadara. I call it like this. So, and comes from the three letters, ghin, dal, ra. Ghadara, it has a negative meaning to it when someone betrays someone. So it has a sense of that he departed from being loyal to him or something of that nature. So فلا يغادر منهم أحدا, no one will depart, no one would leave whatsoever. بل يجمع الأولين والآخرين. Rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings together, يجمع, the first and the last. من بطون الفلوات. From butun is the plural of batn, and batn is the inside of things. If it's the human being, it's his guts or his inside. And batn al-ard is the inside of the earth, al-zahir wal-batin. So butun al-fuluwat. Al-fuluwat is the plural of fuluwa, which is like the deserts and the valleys. وقعور البحار, and the deepest parts of the ocean. So no one will be missed. This is like he's making the explanation detailed so that nothing is left. Because sometimes if a child, he would say no one is going to be missed. Oh, so the one that burned himself when he was alive, he's not going to be missed. If someone died and sunk in the ocean, he's not going to be missed. So فَلَمْ نُغَادِرْ مِنْهُمْ أَحَدًا. No exception whatsoever. وَيَجْمَعُهُمْ بَعْدَ مَا تَفَرَّقُوا. And he bring them together after they have been dispersed, whether their body decayed, whether they were burned, or anything, it doesn't matter. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bring them back to existence. وَيُعِيدُهُمْ بَعْدَ مَا تَمَزَّقُوا. And he bring them back again. يُعِيدُهُم. Al-i'ada is not the first thing, is when someone is resurrected, is returned back. بعد ما تمزقوا, after they have been. تمزق is when something is torn. خلقا جديدا, he would return them. خلقا جديدا, new خلق, new creation. They are the same individuals, but their physical capacity is different, of course. They can sustain an everlasting life. And it's mentioned in details also in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and also in the Quran. فَيُعْرَضُونَ عَلَيْهِ صَفًّا. Now the Quran explains itself. So there's no one chapter in the Quran says the chapter of the Day of Judgment. Like sometimes people, they just want to know the details in order. This is what's going to happen after this. No, this is not the way of the Quran. And it's meant to be this way. And this is the miraculous words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what's best for the hearts. Is that when you read the Quran, you get exposed, you expose your heart to some of the things in the Day of Judgment, then it gets explained in other verses. So what is meant also by the Book of Allah for the hearts to work, and the aql, the reasoning, and for a person to think and to reflect. Not, oh, we're done with that chapter, let's go to the next chapter. There's no such a thing when it comes to the meanings of the Quran. So that's why in the tafsir you would find some of the words that are basically mentioned in other verses in the Quran. So he says everyone will be presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَعُرِضُوا عَلَى رَبِّكَ صَفًّا. They will be all presented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, صَفًّا, in rows. As a rule in the Day of Judgment, no choice. The choice was only in this life. In the Day of Judgment, everyone is dragged to their destiny based on their actions in this life, but no choice. Oh, I don't like to stand, I want to sit, or I want to sleep, or I don't want to stand next to this guy in front of there's no such a thing. Everyone is in state of submission, willingly or unwillingly, no choice whatsoever, not even permitted for them to speak. And no one will be able even have the ability to speak except by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So everything is by the permission of Allah. وَعُرِضُوا عَلَى رَبِّكَ صَفًّا. So he says لِيَسْتَعْرِضَهُم, for them, by the justice of Allah and by the wisdom of Allah, they're all in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as if they are one person. وَيَنْظُرَ فِي أَعْمَالِهِمْ, and to their a'mal to be looked into. The Day of Judgment is about what? Is now you come in the Day of Judgment with your amal, with your actions, so the amal will be looked at. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. The weight of a mustard seed of good deeds will be seen, and the weight of a mustard seed of a bad deed will be seen. Nothing, as the people would not depart, their actions also will be present, and it will be presented, and everyone will see their deeds, good or bad, and there are many verses in the Quran that talks about this. وَيَنْظُرَ فِي أَعْمَالِهِمْ. And he subhanahu wa ta'ala, he was seeing that a'mal in this life, but there was no punishment. And this is again the weakness of the human beings. He's seeing the evil of the evildoers, and he subhanahu wa ta'ala is seeing the goodness of the good people, right? But this is the life of the test. So they're left to do these things because it's a Day of Judgment. And everything will be looked into when it comes to the recompense, al-jaza. He says, وَيَحْكُمُ فِيهِمْ بِحُكْمِهِ. And after that, the hukm of Allah, the judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be established. بِحُكْمِهِ الْعَدْلِ. The just rule. الَّذِي لَا جَوْرَ فِيهِ وَلَا ظُلْمٍ. No dhulm, no injustice, no jawr. Jawr is dhulm, injustice, anything, even the slight deviation from the perfect justice. No one will be treated with any injustice whatsoever. ويقول لهم لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة. And وعرضوا على ربك صفا. وعرضوا, all of them, على ربك, to your Lord, صفا, in rows. لقد جئتمونا كما خلقناكم أول مرة. Indeed you came to us as we created you the first time. How we are created the first time? بلا مال ولا أهل. No wealth, no family, ولا عشيرة, no tribe, no people, the like of you that used to help you. ما معهم إلا الأعمال, nothing but their actions التي عملوها, that they earned it, والمكاسب في الخير والشر, and what they earned in good and evil التي كسبوها, that they earned it. كما قال تعالى ولقد جئتمونا فرادا كما خلقناكم أول مرة, as the other verse, you will come to us back indeed فرادا, individuals, not with your people. كما خلقناكم أول مرة, the same way we created you the first time. وتركتم ما خولناكم وراء ظهوركم, and you would leave what we gave you behind your backs. You're not coming with your wealth and your armies and all of these things. وما نرى معكم شفعاءكم, as the other ayah says, and we don't see your شفعاء, your intercessors that you claimed that they will help you. الذين زعمتم أنهم فيكم شركاء, these idols that you worship, those who that you invoke besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where are they? You come alone, you don't come with them. وقال هنا, and he says here in this ayah, مخاطبا للمنكرين للبعث, addressing those who deny the resurrection. وقد شاهدوه عيانا, now when they see it with their own eyes. بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا, rather you claimed that we won't have a time, an appointed time for you to be resurrected and to return to Allah. أي أنكرتم الجزاء, that means you denied the recompense على الأعمال, on the deeds. ووعد الله ووعيده, and you denied the wa'd of Allah. ووعد Allah, this is a noun, not a verb. ووعد الله, and the promise of Allah, and His wa'id, His warnings. فها قد رأيتموه وذقتموه, now you can see it and you can taste it. And actually this is when people, the ignorant ones, because of the lack of knowledge of the wahy, when they question how things are in this life, and they question the atrocities and the evil actions, this is miraculous creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is by itself the proof of the Day of Judgment. Whoever believes, if a person claims to believe in the Creator of the heavens and the earth, they would be by necessity believe in the Day of Judgment, even before the messengers came to call the people to believe in the Day of Judgment, because of how this life is. Because the most just, because the Creator has to be the most just, the most merciful. So these evil actions is going to be left like this without anything. So that's one of the reason why there is the Day of Judgment, and it's also mentioned in the Quran. بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا فحينئذ تحضر كتب الأعمال. Now the next ayah, ووضع الكتاب, then the book will be brought. ووضع الكتاب, الوضع is when something is put. So فحينئذ تحضر كتب الأعمال, and these things are physical things that happens in the Day of Judgment, not metaphorical things and things that imaginations. No, this is more physical, more reality than the fact that we see each other in this life, but something that beyond our imagination. But the words, the meaning of it is very clear, and this is an example. Any matters of al-ghayb, because this is something that is related to the aqidah, to the belief. This is a matter of unseen. No one of us seen the Day of Judgment, but we know what kitab means. We know what a'mal means. We know what all these meanings, we know it from our worldly perspective. So the meaning of it is clear. So it's kitab, kutub, yes, it's books. It's book of deed, yes, it's book of deed. Do we know how it looks? No. And this is exactly with the same thing with any matter of al-ghayb. Sifatullah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran. Do you know the meaning of it? Yes. Kitabun Arabiyyun Mubin. Clear Arabic book. Do you know how it is? No, we don't. It's a matter of unseen. So we see ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. No tajseem, no giving words that does not exist in the Quran and the Sunnah, bodies and body parts and all of these types of things. Ahl Sunnah, they don't say these things, but they approve what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and they say nothing is the like of Allah, because we don't know how. The same thing with these matters. And for those who allow themselves to make ta'wil and to twist things, they would have to pick and choose, and they would be contradicting themselves. So they would say it's a book. What kind of book? All of the deeds of the people is written in one book. فحينئذ تحضر كتب الأعمال التي كتبها الملائكة الأبرار. Those who, the angels, the righteous angels, they wrote it. The angels are now recording. Each one has two angels on both sides. The one that writes the good deeds and the one that writes the bad deeds. And it's being recorded. And the tawbah, by the will of Allah, repentance wipes away the bad deeds. And when a person dies, then his book will be, some people, their deeds are still continuously added to their books after they die by the continuous good deeds or the continuous bad deeds. But every single human being has his book. اقرأ كتابك. And it will be said, read your book. كفى بنفسك اليوم عليك حسيبا. No one, will be, sufficient is for you to see. And this is, if someone says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do all things. Why these things? This is the perfect justice of Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He will, and if He punishes all of His creation or reward them, no one will question Allah. But this is the perfect justice of Allah, and for people to worship Allah accordingly. Things are not left like this. If people get to see the unseen, our life will be completely different. But that's al-imanu bil-ghayb. So he says, فَتَطِيرُ لَهَا الْقُلُوبِ. Then when people then see the books, and the books are coming, and many verses in the Quran talks about how the books, receiving the books. So the hearts will, he says, فَتَطِيرُ لَهَا الْقُلُوبِ. The hearts will fly away. That means out of the fear and the anticipation. وَتَعْظُمُ مِنْ وَقْعِهَا الْكُرُوبِ. Al-kurub is the plural of al-karb. The difficult miseries. تعظم becomes exalted as a result of this intense, imagine these moments or these hours or these years or whatever, when a person, his book of deeds is coming. And according to the books is one stage. We're not yet into the forgiveness. So when a person sees his book, he sees this sin and that good deed and this good deed and the sin of the other guy that a person backbited. He would see it in his book. I didn't do this evil action, but you backbited him, so you got some of his bad deeds, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So even the believers, when they see this, when some of the people would see that they are ruined. This is if they're treated with what's in their books, they will be all going to the hellfire. But then the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if this is a sin that was not repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from. So as a result of that, the action is to be done is, the books are being written now. So the person would do something now before it's too late, before it's finished. So that means everything is by the will of Allah, but our actions are basically what's going to be recorded. Can a person wipe and remove some of his evil actions that is already recorded? By the will of Allah, yes, if he repents to Allah. If a person repents to Allah, then he won't see it in the Day of Judgment, as the correct opinion based on tawbah, repentance. It removes away. So therefore there's nothing more important in this life after the tawheed of Allah and the obligations of the tawheed than repenting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At-tawbah, constantly repenting to Allah with its conditions and fixing our actions and being watchful of everything that we say and what we do. And he says, وَتَكَادُ لَهَا الصُّمُّ الصِّلَابُ تَذُوبُ. And almost when people imagine again when this is happening, that as-sum are the deaf and not able, the mute. As-silab is the very tough. So as-sum as-silab refers to the things that does not speak, like the mountains, like the iron, all of these things almost would melt if it has ability to see and to understand, meaning of the difficulty of these matters. وَيُشْفِقُ مِنْهَا الْمُجْرِمُونَ. And the criminal ones will be, instead of shafaqa, grief and sadness and fear. فَإِذَا رَأَوْهَا مُسَطَّرَةً عَلَيْهِمْ. When they see it, musattara. Satr is the lines written in the book. أعمالهم, their deeds. محصي عليهم أقوالهم. أقوالهم, their speech. وأفعالهم, their actions. محصي from al-ihsa. That means everything is counted for. Nothing is missed. Everything that they did is there. قالوا, then they would say, then يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها. They would say, woe to us. What's the matter with this book? Does not لا يغادر, right? The same يغادر. Does not leave small or major things unless it's there, أحصاها. It's counted for. So nothing is missed. Nothing departs from it. Nothing a person can hide it or cheating or anything like this. أي لا يترك خطيئة صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا وهي مكتوبة فيه محفوظة. There's no خطيئة, no sin, small or big, unless it's written. محفوظة means it's preserved. لم ينسى منها عمل سر ولا علانية. Nothing is forgotten from it, whether it's secret actions, openly done actions, ولا ليل, ولا نهار, no night or day or anything. ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا. And they found what they've done حاضرا, present. So it's the a'mal becomes something physically that they see in front of them. There are many hadith that talks about this, the mizan, the balance of the deeds, and deeds come in the day of judgment. So وَوَجَدُوا مَا عَمِلُوا, so they find what they've done حاضرا, in front of them. لا يقدرون على إنكاره, they cannot deny it whatsoever. ولا يظلم ربك أحد, and your Lord does not wrong anyone, does not do any injustice to anyone. فحينئذ يجازون بها, because this is their أعمال, this is what you did. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most just. فحينئذ يجازون بها, they will be recompensed according to their actions. ويقررون بها, يقررون, الإقرار is when you confess. Did you have been treated with any injustice? No. Did you do these things? Yes, he did. Like this. ويخزون, and they will be disgraced. ويحق عليهم العذاب, and the adhab will be rightfully established upon them. ذلك بما قدمت أيديهم وأن الله ليس بظلام للعبيد. This is what their hands have earned. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not do any injustice to his slaves. بل هم غير خارجين عن عدله وفضله. But rather, this is the last sentence that he mentioned. They are not away from the adl and the fadl of Allah. Either the justice of Allah or the bounties of Allah. No one else will be treated with anything but these two. The disbelievers, the people, those who enter the hellfire, by the justice of Allah. The believers, for them to enter Jannah is by the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the mercy of Allah, because they would have to be forgiven. And that's the bounty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that shows the importance of al-iman wa tawheed. So وَيَوْمَ نُسَيِّرُ الْجِبَالِ وَتَرَى الْأَرْض. The day when the mountains move, and you see وَتَرَى الْأَرْض, and the day when you will see the earth بَارِزَةً, apparent and it's clear. وَحَشَرْنَاهُمْ, and we bring them together. فَلَمْ نُغَادِرْ, no one departs from them whatsoever. منهم أحد وعرضوا على ربك صفا, they will be presented to your Lord in rows. لقد جئتمونا, indeed you came to us. كما خلقناكم أول مرة, the same way we created you the first time. بل زعمتم أن لن نجعل لكم موعدا, but rather you claim that you would not have a time. ووضع الكتاب فترى المجرمين مشفقين مما فيه. The mujrimeen, the criminals, are the ones that would see and what's in it, and they would be in state of grief, everlasting punishment. مما فيه ويقولون, and they would say يا ويلتنا ما لهذا الكتاب لا يغادر صغيرة ولا كبيرة إلا أحصاها ووجدوا ما عملوا حاضرا ولا يظلم ربك أحد. And the like of these verses are so many in the Quran, and it's needed, of course, as we know, so that the person would repent to Allah and act accordingly. Because of the time, we'll stop here, inshallah. The attendance code is الباقيات الصالحات. بارك الله فيكم. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم ربنا وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.